Hello, Internet, and welcome back to the Story Nook. Go ahead, grab your tea, your water, your coffee, your hot cocoa, whatever it is you want to drink, and join me for more Reddit stories. Some water. Alright, so today we're going to be reading from PettyRevenge. And our first story is posted by user DearBanana2532. Oopsie, did I say that? This is yet another story about my crazy neighbor I had last year. If you haven't read my other stories, please do. I have many more to come, though some will be in other subs. I'm trying to fit stories where they go as I remember them here and there. Honestly, so many things happened, I forgot about it or blanked it out until reminded. I will admit this is totally accidental at first. Every time that fucking door opens, a glare pops off of it and it blinds me and I look up and I go, is it my husband? Nope. Background. This happened right before she was moved. Looking back, probably was one of the reasons she was forced to move. If you remember my last post and how it said she read out her lease violation letter out loud in front of my cameras, well, this was one of the reasons. Hiccup. Neighbor lived above us in a duplex for like 8 to 9 months. At this point, we knew she had a cat, as did everyone who lived on that street. It liked to sit in the windows, so we figured LL knew. We had 2 dogs and paid extra for having pets. Well, one day after we stopped living there, still rented but couldn't sleep there anymore, worked out of town as much as possible, and had been withholding rent legally for at least a month. She's, once again, walking in circles around the house, setting off our cameras. However, this time she's fucking screaming her head off, and her baby is trying to follow her and failing. It was like 10 p.m. and she's out screaming, Luna, you fucker, like, fuck. Primal scream shit. We were out of town and had a bad service, so saw it the next day. We figured out why she was freaking out and just said, fuck it. No use in complaining. We already had to complain about trash weekly, so this was ignorable. The cops also showed up at our house for her at all the time. We only called like 3 times. I have no idea who was calling on her so often, but not us. It wasn't until she had an illegal fire again did the manager call us, and we mentioned the above incident offhand, trying to explain about the fires. Police showing up, we had a camera, we said was, oh yeah, well, that police showing up the week before was likely just her looking for her cats since it got out. Then it was cat, what cat? And we were shocked first off. We were like, yeah, the cat she's had since she, moved in. It sits in the windows all the time. She nor LL had ever seen it. We can only assume she hid it when they came to her apartment, which, by the way, is 5 years of renting from them. I only had to call them twice to fix things for me first, when our water heater went out, and the second when the pipe that went out to our washer leaked. She, on the other hand, called for them to replace the batteries in her smoke detector, even though it's right in our lease, it's on us. She also broke one window, her unit, and one in ours, plus her fridge, that we know of. Then again, as I mentioned in my other post, the lease violation letter came. She violated for having a cat and illegal fires. I assume she had to pay for the pet fee back to them. I don't know. What I do know is she got forced to move to an even smaller apartment, with no yard, as it was in an apartment building in the downtown area, and no driveway of her own. Turns out she has a medical condition and shouldn't be driving anyways, but was when she first moved in above us, and paid at least $100 more for that apartment. Then she was evicted no more than 3 months later from her new apartment for non-payment the second time that year. She had also been harassing and threatening her new neighbors as well. I pray for whoever her next neighbor is. Oh, this is a saga. I wasn't aware this was kind of a saga, so I'm gonna leave this tab open. Possibly check out the other stories that OP has written. And you guys let me know if that's something you're interested in. But we're going to move on to our next story, which is posted by Dr. Dinosaur. I love your name. Want pictures of my notes? Have fun trying to read them. So this story just happened last week, and I realized it may be a good fit for the sub. So I go to a small liberal arts college, and one day last week we had a skills test in my analytical chemistry lab, meaning that we had to perform a laboratory procedure in an allotted amount of time that we had done previously. Except this time graded on the results accuracy for a good amount of points in the class. Needless to say, this is a very stressful thing to do, as it requires making very precise measurements, and for this specific lab, counting individual drops one by one that could go into the 90s over and over again. This is all to say that this particular day in the lab required a lot of focus and counting. And mostly everyone was quiet and diligently yet stressfully going through the procedure. Mostly everyone. This is where the revenge victim comes in. Let's call her Hannah. Hannah is part of a group of 3 girls that are always incredibly inconsiderably loud in the lab. This day in the lab, the usual loudest one was working comparatively quietly like the rest of us, while Hannah and the third friend remained loud, with Hannah very much in first place for volume. Not only was Hannah very rudely loud, but the substance of her loudness were topics that were very much inappropriate for a small lab with a professor nearby. Example, talking about going shopping for thongs with someone across the room. Hannah also tried to get friend number 3 to play music, which thankfully was shut down by the instructor. The result of all of this was an extremely frustrating lab experience for basically everyone who isn't a part of the loud trio, as we all tried to count dozens of individual drops with an absurd level of inconsiderate background noise during a lab that is supposed to be quiet for everyone's ability to focus. The following day, I had a psychology class that Hannah is also in, and she sits in a position where I am able to see her laptop screen. I noticed that during the entire class she didn't pay attention whatsoever, switching between being on her phone and working on another assignment for a different class. Class that day was particularly more note-heavy than usual. After class, Hannah came up to me and asked if I could send her pictures of my notes from that day, as she said she had another assignment she had forgotten about and had to do during class instead. I told her I would because I couldn't think of any good reason to tell her why I wouldn't, but I was still heavily irritated from my frustration the day before, and therefore saw this as my chance for petty revenge. She could have pictures of my notes, but she was going to have to put in effort. Immediately after, while trying to figure out ways to make my notes harder to read, more than my already hard-to-read handwriting, I realized that I could take pictures of my notebook with the 0.5 magnification on my camera, and then crop the photo down to make it look normal again, but with far blurrier words. Eventually I found the perfect distance for the camera in which the words weren't impossible to read, but were certainly not easy to by any measure, just enough that she would have to zoom in almost every individual word to figure out what was written. Afterwards, I sent the pictures of my 6 pages of notes, apologized for my hard-to-read handwriting, and satisfyingly hoped that she would have just as hard of a time with them as I had listening to her in the lab the day before. You know what else I would do? I would sneakily, fuck up some of the information just to be a bitch. Because that's always fucking fun. But Hannah deserved that. She started it. And seems like my next two are struggling to load. Load. There we go. Skimming. I'm trying to gauge how long these two are. I think I'm going to end this episode here today just because we're at like 10 minutes. And I'm feeling tired and sleepy. And I'm losing that steam. So thank you all for being here. You're all wonderful. So, go ahead and hit all the buttons and do the things to appease the algorithm overlords. So that 1, you'll be notified when my videos do come out. And 2, YouTube will be like, hey, people like this video. Let's show it to other people who might like this video. So yeah, thank you all so much for being here. Bye-bye.